The story begins in the Soviet Union during a rainy night. 8 months after Stalingrad, the German army is rapidly retreating. Lieutenant Philip and his tank crew stay behind to defend a bridge. The command arrives to blow the bridge in exactly 5 minutes. The massive crossing is 600 meters long. Philip orders his tense crew to pull the tank back. The heavy machine starts driving in reverse across the structure. Enemy forces fire at them, but the crew fights back while moving. Suddenly, an enemy shell violently strikes their thick armor. Bright sparks fly as hot flames burst inside the dark cabin. The men panic slightly, but they never stop driving backward. Philip looks outside and spots a small deer standing nearby. It stays completely frozen on the burning bridge structure. The massive bridge explodes right behind them as they escape. The entire crew barely makes it out alive. Philip rides a truck through thick fog and ruined buildings. He reads a red folder detailing a secret mission called Operation Labyrinth. He soon arrives at an old factory where his crew is working. A soldier removes his welding mask and says the tank is almost ready. Philip then tells his men that their leave is canceled. They must leave today and head east into no man's land. He tells them their mission is to find Colonel von Hardenberg. One soldier mentions he heard the colonel was already dead. Philip explains this is a top-secret rescue mission without support. The colonel is believed to be hiding in a bunker east of Novaya. Philip orders the men to get the tank ready to move out. The driver puts on his headset inside the dark tank cabin. He pulls levers to start the heavy vehicle's loud engine. The tank rolls forward into a foggy and ruined landscape. While riding, Philip checks his notes on a leather notepad. He tells his crew all about Colonel von Hardenberg. The colonel survived the battle at Stalingrad but lost a hand. Trapped under rubble, he quickly cut off his hand to escape. A crew member with glasses says some consider him a Russian spy. Another soldier adds he survived by hiding with a local woman. When he returned, the army immediately sent him back to war. Philip explains that Von was developing a secret withdrawal plan. This plan holds critical army data that the enemy cannot get. That is exactly why they need to rescue him right away. They drive the tank across empty fields for several hours. They finally stop their vehicle near a tall wooden signpost. Night falls over the area. The crew drives the tank into a dark forest to rest. They sit under a tarp in the rain and share a drink. Philip tells Michel they will take the first watch together. Michel says his girlfriend told him there are ghosts in these woods. He explains that the souls of dead people wander here. Hummel laughs loudly at Michel. He teases Michel for believing her stories. They talk a bit more. Philip tells the men to rest and goes on watch. Michel follows him into the foggy woods with a flashlight. Philip tells Michel to ignore Hummel's teasing. He explains that Hummel lost his 15-year-old son in the war. Philip says the teasing might be Hummel's way of showing he cares. The next morning they move out. The radio operator hears a Latin mass. This is strange because the local people are Orthodox. Philip tells him to turn off the radio. Soon, they approach a long line of concrete tank barriers. Michel asks who built them. Philip says their army forced captured enemy soldiers to do it. The ones too weak to work were killed and left there. Hummel drives the tank through a narrow gap in the barrier. They keep going and reach an open field of tall grass. Philip suddenly spots a fallen danger sign. He yells loudly to stop the tank immediately. There are landmines here. Philip, Michel, and Kylan get out to search for mines. Philip digs in the grass and uncovers a mine near the tracks. He calls Michel over for help disarming the dangerous explosive. Christian uses binoculars to spot an enemy tank in the distance. Philip tells him to keep a close eye on it. Philip cannot find any wires, so they carefully lift the metal disc. Michel spots a grenade underneath and quickly pushes his hand down. It is a trap within a trap, leaving Michel stuck in the grass. Philip tells him to stay calm and promises to get him out. The distant tank moves away, and Philip says their tank is more important. He orders the crew to reverse the heavy vehicle safely away. Philip grabs a thick rope and ties it around the metal mine. He tells Michel to slowly pull his trapped hand out. Michel carefully removes his hand, and the mine does not explode. They retreat behind the tank, and Philip hands Michel the rope. Michel yanks the rope, making the mine explode and setting off the others. A massive dark dirt cloud erupts high into the air. They get back in the tank and continue driving forward. Philip looks up and remembers his wife and young son. A sudden bright flash violently interrupts his happy family memories. A heavy enemy tank fires, and one hit could destroy them. 3 metal tubes fire smoke canisters high into the air. Thick white smoke spreads out and hides their rapid retreat. Philip watches through his binoculars and sees 3 approaching tanks. They are completely trapped between the enemy and the river. He quickly orders Hummel to drive straight toward the water. The tank reaches the river, and Philip orders everyone out. He tells the crew to prepare the Tiger for diving. Their damaged armor took hits, so they risk sinking underwater. Philip firmly insists they have absolutely no other survival option. The men climb outside and attach a long snorkel pipe. The heavy tank slowly drives into the misty river. It fully submerges under the dark water. Only a tall exhaust pipe sticks out above the surface. Inside the dim cabin, Philip tells Hummel to stop. Their loud engine and visible exhaust will expose them. Philip orders Hummel to shut off the engine. Hummel refuses the dangerous command. If the engine fails to restart, they will all drown. Philip firmly repeats the strict order. Hummel finally switches the engine off. They stay silently submerged underwater. Hummel looks up and confirms there are no leaks. The sealed tank is holding up very well. They hear the rumble of enemy tanks passing above. Hummel nervously wipes his sweaty forehead with a glove. Philip decides they will stay safely hidden underwater. Suddenly, water drips onto Philip's face in the dark. The crew panics as a heavy leak starts. Philip decides they must cross the river and surface. Hummel tries to start the engine, but it fails. After a few more frantic tries, it roars to life. The tank emerges through the fog on the opposite shore. Philip quickly orders the engine off. The sweating crew climbs out through the top hatches. They rest and breathe the night air. Philip tells them to prepare the tank for land. Hummel says they only have fuel for 20 kilometers. They ready the vehicle and head out. Night falls as they travel through a foggy forest. Philip remembers the old days by a warm campfire. Von Hardenberg was his old friend, but something happened between them. He doesn't talk about it. Philip gives them all Pervitin from a small glass tube. He says they need to travel all night. Everyone takes the pill except the radio operator with glasses. Philip sees something in the mist. He tells them to stop the tank and shut off the engine. He looks and says those are their own soldiers. He orders the engine on and tells them to move forward. They reach the spot. Philip orders his crew to shut off the engine and dismount. The men climb out of the tank and follow Philip. They walk through a chaotic village filled with thick smoke. Bright fires burn all around while soldiers drag terrified villagers everywhere. Philip walks up to a commanding officer and gives a salute. He meets Senior Assault Unit Leader Krebs and requests fuel and supplies. Krebs looks at the men and asks what they are doing here. Philip replies that his crew is on a secret mission. Nearby, soldiers violently herd women and children toward a large house. Philip says he was told no other troops would be here. Krebs smiles and says this is their own secret operation. All local villages must be cleansed of partisan supporters. They lock the villagers together in one place to save valuable ammunition. Soldiers shove the last struggling people inside the dark building. A soldier steps forward and uses a flamethrower on the building. The house erupts in flames as the people burn alive. Philip and his crew silently watch the bright, raging fire. Krebs looks at Philip and says he knows they remember this fire. Krebs points out that their fuel and supplies have finally arrived. Philip firmly states that they are leaving the village right away. He declares they will spend the night resting inside the tank. Philip orders his men to grab the supplies and move out. They rest inside their dark tank, and Weller passes a bottle. Philip sits quietly and refuses to eat or drink. Weller talks about his past as a windmaker. Kiliag wears round glasses and mentions being a Latin teacher. He adds that Hummel was a train driver. Kiliag calls the war and their orders useless. Philip replies that orders make humans civilized. Hummel quickly stops their argument. He declares there will be no politics in his panzer. The 4 men laugh and raise their drinks to cheer. Philip climbs outside and stands on the tank to smoke. Weller climbs up to join him. Weller wishes he could forget who he was before. He can never be that person again after what happened here. Philip says they will always be the same. They simply follow the orders given to them. Weller invites Philip to visit his Austrian winemaking. Philip says he definitely will. The next day, the tank drives across a foggy field. They approach their destination and spot an old wooden windmill. Philip looks through his binoculars and tells everyone to stay alert. He suspects a trap and orders a slow approach. Kiliak readies his gun, and another soldier loads the cannon. As they move closer, a heavy cannon fires from inside the building. Philip yells for the driver to reverse and create a safe distance. They shoot back, but the enemy cannon survives. The dust clears to reveal a massive Su-100 heavy-duty tank. Just one hit from it could completely destroy them. They fire bullets at the enemy, and Philip orders them to move. They fire their main cannon, but the armor is too strong. Philip tells them to pull back and attack from the side. The Su-100 fires again, and the blast damages their exhaust. They use smoke grenades, and thick smoke hides their retreat. Suddenly, a direct hit violently rocks their tank. Sparks shower inside the cabin, striking near Kiliak. The whole crew is badly shaken by the impact. Philip points out that the enemy tank is heavy and not agile. Philip tells the driver to move forward through the smoke. He watches through his binoculars and yells to halt. The enemy tank rolls forward into a deep blast crater. Philip immediately orders his crew to fire the cannon. Their shell hits the trapped tank and destroys it. Inside their panzer, Kiliak suddenly groans and slumps over. A metal splinter has ripped a bloody wound across his chest. Blood drips from his chin as he struggles to breathe. He begs to die outside in the open air. The men carefully pull him up through the top hatch. Philip cradles Kiliak's head on the outer metal armor. Kiliak asks Philip if his issue with Vaughn is personal. He tells Philip to write to Lucia and the girls. He remembers the beautiful summer of 1939 before the war. He wishes he could just go back to teaching. Kiliak stops speaking and his head falls back lifelessly. They bury Kiliak. Hummel chops branches to make a wooden cross. They place Kiliak's cap and watch on it. After grieving silently, Philip says they need to fix their tank. The exhaust pipe is heavily damaged. Michel walks over to the destroyed enemy tank. He looks inside the smoky wreckage and calls everyone over. All the enemy soldiers have turned into skeletons. Charred skulls rest in the twisted metal. Michel says dead bodies do not burn this fast. Weller immediately says that is enough. They should turn back and say they did not find von Hardenberg. He states it is not normal here. Philip says only 20 kilometers are left. Hummel points out the broken exhaust. Philip tells him to fix it with parts from the SU. Hummel says the tank can only go another 30 kilometers. Philip says there will be supplies at the bunker. Weller tells Philip if Vaughn is a spy, he will shoot him personally. Philip orders them to fix the tank. He looks back down at the skeletons. Past memories suddenly flash in his mind. They fix the tank and move forward. Philip tells Michel to turn on the tank's radio. Michel leans forward and tunes the dials through heavy static. A man suddenly speaks in Latin over the frequency. Michel plays the strange chanting loudly for the entire crew. Philip looks annoyed and orders him to shut it off. Weller grips the steering levers and asks how long they must drive. Philip says they will continue until they find von Hardenberg. Weller argues back that there is no home anymore. He says the German army just keeps retreating backward. Weller questions why von Hardenberg matters so much to Philip. He suggests the missing man might give up information. He thinks von Hardenberg might be a spy like Kiliak claimed. Weller asks if this rescue mission is purely personal. If it is personal, why drag everyone else into it? Philip says the Russians will come if they capture Vaughn first. Weller angrily shouts that the Russians are already here. He believes they are heading straight toward their deaths. Weller states Philip is taking unnecessary risks and is compromised. He officially votes to release Philip from his command. Philip stays very calm and asks the others to vote. Michel looks nervous in the dim light before supporting Philip. Philip then turns and asks Hummel for his vote. Hummel smiles slightly and says they take all risks together. He refuses to betray his commander and votes for Philip. Philip promises he will not report this sudden mutiny. Philip holds a compass over a folded map on his lap. The compass needle spins wildly and does not work at all. The tank drives through heavy rain. Philip remembers a building with burning windows. Thick fog covers the the forest. Philip halts the tank. He orders the team out with their weapons. They inspect footprints in the mud. German boots made them. They walk into the foggy woods. Philip suddenly crouches down. He finds a tripwire attached to German grenades. They step over it. They find decomposed soldiers on the ground. Bodies hang from the tall trees. Philip says these paratroopers failed their mission. The men enter a dark, concrete bunker. Philip opens a heavy door. Inside, soldiers and women are drinking and laughing. Philip asks for von Hardenberg. A smiling soldier says he is waiting. He tells Philip to follow him alone. In the dark tunnel, Philip remembers receiving a telegram. He also recalls retreating from the Dnieper bridge. The soldier stops walking and tells Philip to take courage. The soldier leaves, and Philip walks down a staircase alone. Philip sees Vaughn near a fire and stops in silence. He is completely shocked to find his old friend alive. Vaughn turns around and says he was waiting for Philip. Philip says he came to get him. He tells Vaughn that they must leave immediately. Vaughn laughs loudly and asks what happens if he refuses. He finds it strange. Philip arrived in a small tank. Vaughn knows Philip will force him to complete his orders. Vaughn sits at a table and invites Philip to eat. Sitting there, Vaughn asks what they did back in Stalingrad. Philip remembers Russian forces hiding in a shelter with civilians. Philip received orders to set fire to the entire shelter. Vaughn sat inside his tank and looked very hesitant. Philip yelled the final command to just follow the orders. Vaughn followed the order and the heavy tank fired. Huge flames quickly burned everyone alive inside the building. Philip told his horrified men it was not their decision. The fruit and cheese on the table suddenly rot and grow thick mold. Vaughn says Philip is the reason they are all here. Philip insists he came to finish Operation Labyrinth. He says Colonel Richter sent him. Vaughn smirks and questions if Richter ever really existed. He explains they were warning clues all along. Philip looks down at his stalled wristwatch. He remembers a spinning compass and an unburned house. Vaughn tells Philip he must return to the Dnieper bridge. He asks why Philip delayed giving the retreat order. In a flashback, a soldier hands Philip a folded telegram. Philip reads that his wife and son died during a bombing. They burned to death in a shelter. Philip violently crumples the paper in his fist. Vaughn looks at him and says, "We reap what we sow." A tear falls as Philip asks where they actually are. Horrific screams echo from a blazing furnace nearby. Vaughn stares at the flames. He says Philip's journey is ending right now. Vaughn reveals he died long ago at a factory. He points toward the roaring fire and tells Philip it is time. Suddenly, Philip wakes up screaming inside his dark tank. He is still on the bridge. Everything just happened in his mind. He looks through the viewport in panic. His tank explodes violently in a huge ball of fire. Philip and his team die on the collapsing bridge. Thanks for watching.